Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever thought about how a place can bridge East and West, not just on a map or culturally, but like right down to the genetic level?
Hmm.
Well, today we're diving into Azerbaijan. It's, a relatively small country, but it packs this amazing punch in terms of genetic diversity. It's right there at the crossroads of Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
And scientists are finding its gene pool incredibly intriguing. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. And what's fascinating here is exactly that how its specific spot on the map and its complex history have cooked up this unique genetic mix. It's genuinely one of the world's most genetically diverse microzones.
A microzone, wow.
Yeah. So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to explore how all those layers of history, we're talking millennia, aren't just in history books. They're literally recorded in the DNA.
Like a living record.
Exactly, a living archive. And it reveals these narratives that honestly still have researchers scratching their heads and probably reaching for more research grants. It's more than just ancestry tracing.
Okay, so let's get into some of those wow facts. What specifically are geneticists finding?
Well, when they started looking closely at Caucasus populations, the Azerbaijani results really stood out. They found this extraordinary mix of genetic markers.
Markers like?
Things like specific Y-DNA and mtDNA haplogroups. You see names like J2, G2, R1b, and R1a popping up prominently.
Okay, for listeners maybe not deep into genetics, Y DNA traces the father's line, mtDNA the mother's, right?
Precisely. So these different haplogroups, J2, R1b, etc., they act like signposts pointing back to different ancestral origins. And in Azerbaijan, these signposts point in, well, many different directions.
So Mediterranean, Persian, Turkic, Slavic, all mixed together.
That's the picture emerging. It suggests connections to all those groups reflected right there in the genes.
And the numbers are striking, you mentioned?
Oh, absolutely. Consider this. Over 20%, 1 in 5 Azerbaijani men belong to haplogroup J2.
And J2 is linked to?
It's strongly associated with the spread of agriculture out of the Near East. Think ancient Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, very old ties.
Okay, 20% J2. What else?
Now you've got R1b. Somewhere between, say, 17 and 19% of Azerbaijani men carry this marker.
R1b, that one rings a bell. Isn't that common in Western Europe?
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's often linked to the spread of people from the Eurasian Steppe, the Pontic-Caspian region, maybe associated with Indo-European language expansions.
Yeah.
So completely different origin story from J2.
Wow. So you have this significant chunk linked to ancient farmers and another big chunk linked to steppe pastoralists or Western Europe.
Exactly. And having both J2 and R1b at such high frequencies in the same population, that's quite rare.
Why is it so rare?
Usually one major ancestral wave tends to dominate or dilute the others over time. Seeing both these major, quite different ancient lineages so strongly represented side-by-side points to really deep, persistent mixing over a long period, not just passing contact.
You can almost picture the blend of cultures just from those two numbers, can't you?
It paints a very vivid picture.
Yeah.
And it ties in perfectly with Azerbaijan's geography.
Right. Its location. You said it's key.
Absolutely. Look where it is squeezed between the Caspian Sea and the Caucasus Mountains. It's been a natural corridor, a funnel, and sometimes a refuge for human groups for thousands of years, a historical mixing bowl.
So who passed through or settled there?
Oh, you name it. Think about the waves. You had Scythians, those nomadic warriors from the steppes, Persians building huge empires, leaving deep Iranian connections. Arabs brought Islam and their own genetic threads. Then the Mongols swept through.
Right.
Later, various Turkic groups arrived from Central Asia, profoundly influencing the language. And more recently, Russians from the north. Each group left a mark.
And not just culturally, but actually in the chromosomes.
Precisely. Its history etched into DNA. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Go on.
Because researchers aren't just guessing based on history. They see it in the genome sequences. They found clear ancient DNA signatures from both Neolithic farmers and those steppe pastoralists.
Both. You mean not one replacing the other?
Exactly. That's the unique part. In many places in Europe or Asia, you see a strong signal from one, often suggesting the early group was largely replaced or assimilated. But in Azerbaijan, it's like geological layers. Both are strongly present.
So the farmer DNA and the steppe DNA coexist significantly.
Yes. It suggests Azerbaijan might have acted as a sort of genetic refugium where these different groups could persist and mix over long periods rather than one simply overwhelming the other. It's a genomic echo of these successive waves.
Okay, this paints a picture of incredible long-term mixing. So it probably makes sense that figuring out the main origin gets complicated.
Yes. That leads us to a more, let's say, spicy point, academically and sometimes politically. There's been debate about Azerbaijani origins.
How so?
Well, historically, especially considering the Turkic language spoken there, some narratives, some scholars have emphasized a predominantly Turkic origin, linking it strongly to the Seljuk migrations, Ottoman influence, that sort of thing.
Okay, focusing on the linguistic and later historical connections.
Right. The idea being that the Turkic migrations might have involved large-scale population replacement.
But what does the genetic evidence say? This raises an important question.
Indeed it does, and this is where recent, more detailed genomic studies offer a counter-argument, or at least a more complex picture.
Which suggests?
These newer studies suggest that the direct genetic input from those Turkic migrations into the modern Azerbaijani gene pool is actually surprisingly modest, less than 15% in some estimates.
Less than 15%, despite the language shift.
Correct. It suggests that while the language and culture were profoundly influenced, the underlying genetic layers are much older. The dominant genetic heritage appears to be pre-Turkic.
Pre-Turkic meaning?
Meaning it's rooted much more deeply in the indigenous populations of the Caucasus and the Iranian plateau, people who were there long before the major Turkic expansions.
So language and genes tell slightly different stories here.
It highlights that difference, yes. Language and culture can spread rapidly, sometimes without massive population replacement. The genetics point to deeper roots, significant contributions from ancient farmers, from Caucasian Albanians, an ancient group in the region, maybe even traces from Zoroastrian communities.
So there's a tension between some historical narratives and the raw genetic data.
There can be, yes.
Yeah.
Especially when narratives emphasize a singular or pure origin. Genetics often reveals a much more blended, layered reality. It's important for us, just presenting the science, to state that these studies point towards a complex mix, not necessarily aligning perfectly with any single narrative. It's tied deeply to identity, of course.
It really underscores how complex identity is, doesn't it? That it's not just one thing.
Absolutely.
And this complexity really makes Azerbaijan stand out genetically. You said it's retained this rich cocktail of ancestry.
That's a good way to put it. Unlike places that might be more genetically uniform, Azerbaijan held on to contributions from many different streams. You see those Caucasian Albanian traces, the deep Iranian links, the later Turkic elements, even smaller but detectable threads from Ashkenazi and Levantine groups.
A real crossroads effect.
Exactly. It's reflected very clearly in genetic analyses. Researchers use tools like principal component analysis PCA charts to visualize how populations relate genetically.
Right, those charts that show clusters of dots.
Precisely. And on these PCA charts, Azerbaijanis often form their own distinct cluster. They group near other Caucasus populations, naturally, but they're separate enough to form their own sort of branch or clade. Even within the Caucasus, they stand apart.
So they share ancestry with neighbors, but still have something unique.
Yes. For example, a big 2022 study showed they share maybe 60–70% of their genes with neighbors like Armenians and Georgians, which makes sense geographically and historically, but they also carry a significant admixture signal, around 15–20% from Central Asian sources. And crucially, this specific Central Asian signal is largely absent in their immediate neighbors.
Wow, so that's a clear genetic difference setting them apart.
It is. It's like visible gene flow that you can map.
Yeah.
It points to specific historical connections, maybe along trade routes like the Silk Road, that brought different genetic elements into Azerbaijan that didn't penetrate surrounding regions in the same way. It makes their genetic signature uniquely identifiable.
That history written in DNA is just fascinating. But, it's not all just about ancient history, is it? Does this unique genetic diversity have any, real-world implications today? For health, maybe?
That's a great question. And yes, it does. It's not just a historical curiosity. This variation has caught the eye of medical researchers and anthropologists, too.
How so? What are they finding?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this history of mixing and adaptation has left marks relevant to health. For instance, researchers have found higher frequencies of certain gene variants linked to things like lactose tolerance.
Being able to digest milk as adults.
Exactly, which often points to a history involving dairy farming and pastoralism,
Yes.
likely from those nomadic influences or early agricultural practices. Makes sense, given the mix.
Okay, what else?
There's also evidence for genetic adaptations related to living at higher altitudes. Again, not surprising, given the Caucasus Mountains are right there.
Makes sense.
And perhaps most interesting is the diversity in their immune system genes, specifically the HLA complex.
HLA. Those are super important for fighting off diseases, right?
Critically important. And Azerbaijanis show remarkable diversity in these genes. This suggests strong evolutionary pressure, natural selection favoring resistance to a wide range of diseases.
Why would they have such diverse immunity?
It likely stems from that very history we've discussed. Exposure to diverse diets from farming and pastoralism, plus being at a crossroads, meant exposure to pathogens carried along trade routes by diverse peoples. This genetic diversity and immunity might even explain historical accounts suggesting the region was less severely impacted by certain epidemics compared to neighbors. It's like an evolutionary advantage baked into their genes by their history.
Wow. So the history isn't just history, it's shaped their biology today.
In very tangible ways.
This whole deep dive, it really pulls everything together. The Azerbaijani genome isn't just a collection of genes, it's like a storybook written in DNA, isn't it?
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Full of trade routes, conquests, migrations, resilience, love stories even, buried in the code.
Precisely. And what this deep dive really highlights, I think, is that the idea of a national identity isn't static. It's not frozen in some ancient past.
It's built up over time.
Exactly. Layer by layer, interaction by interaction over millennia. It's dynamic, complex, constantly being woven from these different threads, a testament to human movement and connection.
So what does this all mean when we look at a nation's identity through this genetic lens?
Yeah, it certainly makes you think, doesn't it? Knowing this incredibly mixed and layered genetic history.
Yeah, it raises questions. What really defines national identity for you, listening now?
Is it solely about tracing back to some supposed ancient, pure bloodline? Or is it maybe something more fluid, a modern cultural unity forged through all these centuries of interaction and shared experience?
Something to mull over. Genetics gives us one layer, history another, culture another.
It definitely shows us how multifaceted identity truly is, a fascinating puzzle.